Welcome to this meeting of the Milton Planning Board in the Blute Conference Room on September 25th. It's our third meeting of the fiscal year. I think it's more than that. I think it's the fourth. But in any event, it's early days in the fiscal year, and I'm Alex Whiteside, the chairman, and we go around the table. If I tried to introduce everyone, I would undoubtedly slip up, and they would be cross. So why don't you introduce yourselves?
My name is Edward Duffy, member.
Emily Ennis, member.
Michael Kelly, member.
I'm Emily Martin, I'm the admin to the planning board.
Brian Furs, member.
William Clark, Planning Director.
Okay. We're sending some minutes around the table, and at some point we're going to see if people are happy with them,
I think they made it this far.
and then we're going to approve them,
You
hopefully.
started here.
But
They haven't
they're
made it
going to
too
go,
far.
Coffee, I see.
there's only one copy.
Paper.
Exactly. We're saving
Saving
paper
trees.
here at the Milton Planning Board.
Some double-sided print.
Ooh, ecologically sound, I like it.
Now, our next meeting is going to be next Monday at 6:30 at the high school, where we are going to, with any luck, approve the housing production plan. And the selectmen are going to be there, and with any luck, they are going to also approve it. And we are going to have minutes pre-written, which we are going to approve after the meeting.
What time at the high school?
What?
What time?
6:30.
Thank you.
At the-
So-
Do you have a
So,
room number yet?
201.
201,
Posted
awesome.
today.
But that's not the,
okay,
All
so
right.
that's exciting. So that's up next Monday. Then next Tuesday, what
Can you
happens?
Wait.
stick on Monday for a second?
Yeah, because it's even more exciting than that.
Oh, yes, that's just the precursor.
That is, it's the appetizer before the main event, which is at 7. We have the final public forum for the master plan, and our consultants will be introducing the draft master plan to the public. I believe it's actually on the town's website now, last I saw. So people can go and download it and have a look. If you go to the main website, on the left-hand side, there's a link that says master plan, takes you to the master plan page. So the consultants will present the draft master plan. It'll be sitting around for a month or so before town meeting, so there'll be plenty of time to get public comment back. And I know the planning board and the master plan committee, and I believe the selectmen have already seen the first round of the draft, so we're continuing to collect comments from them on it. So that's from 7 to 9 in the Milton High School auditorium on Monday, the 29th.
All right, that's a no-miss event. Next, I should announce, because I've been reminded that I should announce, that this meeting is being recorded, twice recorded, duly recorded, and it is being televised, so be advised. Now, our next meeting would be October 9th, but I gather, Brian, you have a conflict?
I have a conflict, but it doesn't, I can either try to work around it.
next one.
Do you have anything serious on the schedule, or I can,
Is anything
Excuse
big
myself.
on for the 9th, Bill?
I'll be late to that meeting.
You'll be late.
Yes.
We have a public hearing on,
333 Brush Hill Road.
we do have a public hearing scheduled.
7 o'clock, though.
Okay. I think I'll be able to make 7. That shouldn't be an issue.
This is, 333 Brush Hill Road is renewing the special permit that we issued a few years ago for brushwood.
right?
You received the documents at the last meeting. Emily, yours is in your folder.
Excellent.
What else is on the, we're going to have to meet if we got that advertised.
That's fine.
Yeah.
I'll try to make it. I'll do my
Okay.
best.
Okay.
All right, but that's about it for now.
That is it.
That is it.
It is
So
it.
it may be a quick meeting.
Yes.
Okay, and the 23rd is a meeting. How does that strike?
There's
Folks.
a Milton Gala event that night for the library.
They always schedule it on planning board nights.
I don't know if we're concerned about that conflict
Yeah.
or not.
That's really funny.
Okay, so what do the people think? The people being, of course, the members of the planning board.
I have, or Brian and I both have a master plan committee meeting on the 16th, so we wouldn't be able to move it till then. Do we actually have anything scheduled for the 23rd? It's the meeting
No.
before town meeting.
It's the meeting before town meeting. We could think about doing it on the 22nd.
Wednesday, the
I-
22nd?
And
I have a conflict.
on the 22nd?
Yep.
Could we do
On the 22nd?
Could we meet before town meeting as we did
Yeah.
We're going
last
to meet
May?
before the
We're gonna do
town
that
meeting.
Anyway, okay.
Shall we try that?
Sure.
Yeah,
What?
yeah. If there's no major changes after the public hearings tonight, there would be no reason to meet
Well,
on
we're
the
meeting on the
23rd.
9th.
Well, yeah, we've got that as
So I'll
well.
put you at 6:30 on,
The 20th,
6:30 and the 27th?
27th.
Yeah, we
Work.
can even,
That gives you 45 minutes to do something.
it gives us an hour.
Yeah.
You know that the town meeting does not start at 7:30 sharp because some people
We can also check in.
straggle in.
Yeah,
if we
yeah,
need to be
6:30
counted.
should be fine.
Okay.
The 23rd is out.
The 23rd is out, and if we need another meeting between the 9th and the town meeting, Emily will coordinate a good date. Okay, so the 23rd is out.
Yep.
We now have done the master plan committee, we've done the special town meeting. It's citizens speak time. Any citizens who want to address the planning board on a matter that isn't going to be a part of our public hearing should feel free to come approach the board and speak. Okay, I guess we'll pass on to the next issue, which is a public hearing in 5 minutes. But take a look at, you've all been given the housing production plan. And as you recall, you saw the last draft, and we got some comments. And we have addressed all the comments in this, and we got comments, Katie Conlon made some comments, Ed made some comments, I made some comments. We've had a number of comments from people, and I think when you read this document, you'll find it to be in order and ready to be approved next Monday night. But if you find a burning issue between now and then, over the weekend, if you find a burning issue, let Bill know about the burning issue before Monday night.
For those that wanted a red line, it came to you electronically. That would show you the different changes and who put in what.
Thank you.
Okay, it looks to me to address the issues that were raised before. Okay, now, you're going to, we're going to discuss 131 Elliott Street and the document that you received tonight. This is, Bill, why don't you just briefly describe what's in the document?
The 40B application, or the comprehensive permit, went to the Zoning Board of Appeals the end of August. That hearing started with the preliminaries. It went through who's doing what. It gave an overview of the project, and at that time, the Zoning Board of Appeals, who is the ruling body there, asked for a peer review. The peer review was done. You have the peer review documents before you, and you have the applicant's response to the peer review documents. What I didn't give you were the stormwater calculations. If anybody wants the calculations, see me. I think about the only one that really does a lot with those would be Mike. And I think you can tell by what Horsley Witten has already done that most of your issues will be addressed there. There's 3 sets of plans. There's a traffic component in there. There's an independent traffic person hired by Horsley Witten for the zoning board that addresses traffic, and then there's Jack Gillen's response to that. You have all of that. Although you have no official play with that process, comments are, you would give your comments back to the selectmen, and they will turn those same comments over as coming from the planning board and from staff. I know that the senior staff for the town is getting documents for this. I know DPW and engineering already has it. The others will be getting it tomorrow. The selectmen have copies of it. That's it.
Now, this occurs next Tuesday, I believe.
It does.
Okay, so on, should we, at the end of our housing production plan,
If anybody has comments, that would be a very good time to give me those
right,
comments.
I don't think that we need put it on because we're not going to vote on the comments. They'd simply be the individual comments which would be forwarded to the selectmen to forward to the Board of Appeals. So we won't mess up the agenda by putting this on. But if you do have thoughts about how the plan, if there are omissions or if there are desirable changes, then they should be communicated with Bill, and he will forward them. Now, it's time for the public hearing. And let's see how we'll start this. Shall we start with the 2 articles we pushed over from last time? One which had to do with grandfathering, and the other one of which had to do with signage in the business district. Shall we do that? Let's start with the grandfathering one. As you may recall, the way I read the grandfathering article, when it said, where it says as follows, grandfather, there it is. It says, it may be otherwise extended or altered where such extension or alteration does not render the structure nonconforming with respect to other requirements. So, say you had a frontage deviation. Let's take my own house as an example. I have a porch 5 feet deep on the front of the house. It's 15 feet from the street rather than the required 30 feet from the street. And then 5 feet in, 20 feet from the street, still is most of the house, about 35 feet of house, set back 20 feet. And then there's another wing of the house that's set back another 10 feet, and it actually is 30 feet from the street. What I read this to say was that if this passes, as a matter of right, I could extend the front of my house to the front of the porch, 15 feet of the street, and run it all the way down to where the house now ends. And in my view, that would be a extremely undesirable result. So, Mr. Corcoran, you've come right up to be heard on this, so.
Well, I think at the last discussion, there was some notion that perhaps the standard ought not to be as of right, but maybe a special permit. I do think that it ought not to be a variance standard because, as a practical matter, it's impossible to prove hardship in variance matters. But if someone has a tasteful addition to the house that is acceptable with the neighbors and abutters, then it ought to be done by a special permit, not simply as of right. I do see the concern with respect to as of right approval, so I would suggest that the language be amended and that the board make a recommendation to recommend approval subject to amendment, which would be striking out the words as of right, but within the existing, strike that may be extended or altered with a special, by means of a special permit, rather than by as of right.
But we'd have to describe the special permit somewhere. It seems to me.
No, there's the special permit standards that are applicable generally in the bylaw and which are applied weekly by the Board of Appeals ought to be the standards that they apply, and they do it routinely.
So you think that my house, with the porch 15 feet from the street, there should be a special permit allowing the entire front of the house to be 15 feet from the street going up 2 stories?
Yeah.
I think that that requires more thought, and I would suggest that we bump this one back to the planning board for further study.
That's fine as well. I'm not,
What does the board think?
I guess I have 2 questions. One would be, is the concern less from the board if frontage was removed from that? So if we were dealing with strictly side and rear setbacks? And secondly, what would be grounds upon which we could reject a special permit actually be? And would our rejection be able to be upheld if it was based on a tasteful
it
standard?
wouldn't be before you, it would be before the Board of Appeals, and the determination would be whether or not it was
Fair enough.
detrimental to the neighborhood, and otherwise not in conformity with the general intent of zoning. You simply would remove the obligation to prove
Hardship, I
hardship.
understand that, right. So essentially, an abutter would still have the ability to suggest it was detrimental to the neighborhood.
Correct,
But it gives ZBA a greater threshold to
exactly.
overlook that.
I could see potentially removing frontage, because I think the vast majority of applications would probably be for side or rear setbacks rather than for frontage. And you could still use the hardship requirement for the frontage. But certainly because frontage really determines what the building feels like from the street, much more so than side and rear, it would be quite a change to a neighborhood if a front porch goes up
I agree.
multiple stories and is filled in and all of that, much less so if an addition is put onto the side or the rear. So,
But assume my porch went into the side yard, and the porch or the deck, whatever, extends 2 feet from the side line. To say that the entire house then can be moved 2 feet from the sideline with a special permit is, rather than a variance, I mean, it does soften the zoning. It does seem to me that this is something that a little more thought might actually yield a better result.
I agree.
I kind of thinking through something as you were saying that, if your side setback made contact with the neighbor's driveway, that wasn't so offensive, but then you carried it back to an adjacent location to his house and it was that close to him, it might get to the point where it's like, yeah.
I mean, I guess the question though is, there's always going to be examples of what won't fit into the criteria. Is that why we make it the special permits standard as opposed to by right, so that the ZBA has the ability to say that's not the intent here, and it is detrimental to the neighborhood. I understand the purpose of the bylaw. It's There's a lot of situations in town where people can't do what they're hoping to do without a huge amount of process and extra money. But I sympathize with our chair's concern as well. There's going to be situations where this isn't appropriate, and
The bylaw, for the most part, is protecting the neighbors, isn't it?
that's correct.
The
so-
purpose of zoning is to protect everyone else from what you might do with your.
Exactly.
Exactly.
So I think,
Yeah.
you know,
Whether that's
it's not
reason-
something we should
Whether that's reasonable is a
shouldn't
different
be
story.
softening zoning without due diligence and due course. I would agree with that.
Yeah, and I would certainly say, and it sounds like we're sort of all there, that removing as a matter of right and inserting by means of a special permit would be the
That's
minimum
the
change
minimum
for this.
standard
Yeah,
I'd be willing to do
exactly.
here.
Whether or not we send it back for further study. Sadly, I missed the first part of the discussion on this, so,
Well, the warrant committee seemed inclined to send it back for a little more study.
I'm happy to recommend that the board do that. We did not have time to put together the type of materials that I'd hoped to do to help present. I have a fundamental concern, however, with the way our zoning bylaws are written. They don't account for the existence of what's in town today. We have a town that was developed, I think, magnificently before zoning happened. And the stuff that's come along after zoning isn't nearly as nice as what was done before zoning was enacted. And I think the town bylaws ought to recognize that more affirmatively, more formally, and ought to encourage reinvestment in those areas that where pre-existing non-conforming structures exist. I think your example, I understand your example. You don't have direct next-door neighbors who are going to be necessarily impacted, but there are lots of other neighborhoods where that could happen, and I think the investment that occurs, it outweighs the impact that a minor modification or a modification to a pre-existing non-conforming dwelling would have on its surrounding neighborhood. That's just the way I think, and I think that it is important for the town to begin to recognize how wonderful and beautiful and how well considered the old subdivisions of this town were put together. They're magnificent homes and small lots. We have hundreds of 5,000 square foot lots with 3-story homes that aren't set back from the front yard, they're not set back from side yard, and they fit, and they fit nicely. And I think the ability to modify those without having to go get a variance ought to be available to homeowners, recognizing that the standards today for living aren't what they were. You know, kitchens need to be larger. You need to have more than one bathroom. You need to have larger bedrooms. Those things that make living reasonable ought to be able to be accommodated with respect to the expansions, the modifications, the updating of old dwellings. But there's character in this town, beautiful character in this town, that ought to be acknowledged. And the ability to modify those homes ought to be available in a reasonable manner.
and this is not a problem that's unique to Milton alone. There are plenty of towns in the New England area that developed exactly the way we did, long before zoning. And if you look at the houses on the lots, they do not conform to the current zoning requirements. And yet, they're the beautiful houses that everybody all want to own. So I don't have a problem with this coming back for further study. It may be that we want to see what some other towns have done to address this problem themselves and see if it gives us a way forward on this.
Well, I think to everything you just said, I
Yeah.
think part of what this board needs to think about in looking at this bylaw is a way to make sure that in asking for a variance or a special permit or relief from this particular zoning, that they're actually doing it in order to retain the character and not to tear the home down and keep a setback that was intended for a different purpose. So I think there are things that we probably want to think about here that need to be implied. But I understand the concern. I sympathize with the concern, but I think we need to be very careful about what we're trying to do here. There's been a lot of McMansionism in Massachusetts, and we seem to have been be somewhat protected from it to date, so I'd like to think we can continue to do that.
There may be some guidelines that we can put into place.
Exactly.
give
I
the-
was going to say that I don't disagree with you, but design standards.
No way, Alex. Actual
Yes,
design standards.
Design standards are, and
Being
you
recorded,
shake
right?
your head, Ned, but actually, when you say you want to see these houses preserved, you don't just slap something on the side of them and say, there you are. You actually get a professional in who looks at it and does something that, in fact, enhances the neighborhood.
No question about it, and that happens routinely. And people who desire to modify their dwellings spend time and money developing plans, sharing them with neighbors, and getting neighbor buy-in. It's the rare occasion, but there are occasions where there's already a war going on over the fence, and so the war that's going on over the fence prevents an agreement on what is otherwise a pretty nice result. And because there's the war and opposition, you can't prove hardship, and the Board of Appeals has to deny it. And that's the rare case, but it does happen, and it would reduce the temperature in those cases. It would take some of the, I think it is appropriate to refer back to study because there's a lot of discussion and not enough understanding as to where the outcome of this might really come. So I would recommend that it be referred back to study, but I think it's an important thing to keep moving forward with because we are a town that we have magnificent neighborhoods in town that suffer from their inability to be improved.
Okay, we will expect you to keep our feet to the fire. And who else wants to be heard in this particular article? If no one, I suggest to the board that we could vote to recommend to town meeting to refer this back to the planning board for study.
So moved.
Second?
All in discussion? All in favor? Aye. Okay. Let's do the signed ones together. Let's do the PUD, the condominium. Let me just get the title of this.
Land unit townhouse development.
Planned unit townhouse development. Okay, now this is an article that we submitted, but Mr. Corcoran has a client who's already interested in using the zoning. Isn't that interesting? So why don't you say a few words?
Thank you, and we did bring a brief PowerPoint presentation to help set this back in context. I'm Ned Corcoran, as you know. I'm joined by Jack Dawley, who is the principal of Northland Residential Corporation, and it is Northland's interest in redeveloping the St. Pius Rectory property on Brush Hill Road that has really been the impetus behind this proposed bylaw. It is a, in general terms, and I'll turn it over to Jack to describe more particularly the parcel, but it is a large 8.5 acre parcel on Brush Hill Road. Northland Residential has taken title to the property. Their redevelopment is not subject to permits and approvals, but their primary interest has been to work with the neighborhood, to work with the town, to arrive at a level of density that would be greater than normal under current zoning, but which would be not as great as might be secured if they were to follow the comprehensive permit path. It is property that abuts a public housing project on the Boston side of the line, and so density and how that density is massed and how it's developed is important. We conducted, since last April 1st, 5 or 6 meetings with the neighborhood group, a couple of site walkthroughs with the neighbors, so 5 or 6 meetings at the St. Pius Church, a series of meetings with this board and the development of the bylaw. We think it is a very well-written, well-crafted bylaw, obviously significantly designed to fit the requirements of this property, has some other application, we believe. I, for one, am not concerned that it could be considered overly specific, but I do think there is some general notion to it. Is really it is a function of how we're have been doing zoning of larger properties. But I think, given the fact that the board has created a subcommittee to work on a more general approach to zoning of large estates, that there's a clear message being sent to the town by this board that it is paying very careful attention to the development pressures that are coming before the town, and that a very sensitive and sensible means of arriving at a more general approach to zoning would be appropriate, and I look forward to, I've been asked to serve on that committee, and I look forward to doing that with the board. So with that, let me hand it over to Jack for an overview of the property and the process, and we can get into further questions and concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. As Ned said, I'm Jack Dawley from Northland Residential. I'm the owner and the president of the company. Bill, if I could ask you to advance maybe to the 4th slide, which will show a plan. And I'll try to speak to that. Yeah, keep going. This is a picture or an image of the property. It is centered in the middle. As you can see, it's not quite rectangular. The property is 8.58 acres of land with about 405 feet of frontage at the bottom of that image along Brush Hill Road. It runs not quite, obviously, perpendicular to Brush Hill Road to the rear on the right-hand side, and I guess obliquely on the left-hand side to the rear property line, which happens also to be the City of Boston, Town of Milton property line. The property is generally flat, very little topography, and by our analysis is free of wetlands. It is presently improved with an existing driveway, which you can see enters the property approximately the middle of the frontage along Brush Hill Road, curls around to a structure and put 2/3 back, which is a circa 1913 building known as the William Dupree House. This was also part of the Tucker Estate, which encompassed land both to the left and right of that of the property specific. There's also a small carriage house to the rear. The property's been owned by St. Pius Rectory for many, many years, St. Pius Church, excuse me, for many, many years, and was used as the rectory. Notably, the parish priest would, if he didn't drive and walk to the rectory, he would use what we refer to as this tail or sliver of land, which is in the upper left-hand corner. I don't have a wand, if you will. There's a 25-foot tail that's sort of shaped like a hockey stick in the upper left-hand corner, excuse me, that takes you out to Cushing Street. There are 5 abutting parcels on the Cushing Street side and 2 on the Dana Ave, I guess, Ave side to the southeast. The property's been not abandoned, unused by the church for the last 4 or 5 years. I put it under agreement last summer and took title to it this past spring. As Ned said, we've gone through a number of meetings with the planning board, the selectmen, immediate abutters, and general neighborhood group with respect to our vision of utilizing the property. And I'll dive into that. Bill, if I can ask you to advance it one more time. This is a little bit of a deceiving photo because Brush Hill Road is actually straight. There's not a big bend in it like this. But the frontage is is recognized by a large stone wall and stone entry. The stone wall is probably, oh, I don't know, 2 feet thick and at a minimum waist high. Fairly dense stand of mature trees throughout the property, unmaintained, unmanaged, lot of overgrowth, dead trees, invasive species exist not only along Brush Hill Road frontage and in somewhat of an unkempt fashion, but certainly as you enter the property. One more slide, please. This is the existing rectory building known as the Rectory or the William Dupree House. It was built on or about 1913-14. It is a well, it does qualify for the as a historic house under the historic provisions of under the provisions of the Milton Historic Bylaw, and so there is. It can be demolished subject to a demolition delay. We've had a fair amount of conversation about whether the building should be retained or not retained. We have come down on the former, and retaining it and modifying it, reusing it, rehabilitating and reusing it as a number of residential units. So there was originally a circle, as you can see, that entered the house. It's been modified over the years for different purposes, so if we took you back to some of the historic pictures, although it's close to this, it's not identical to this. But it's in generally good shape. We did a structural survey of it. I should say it's stucco on the outside with a slate roof. And the foundation is stone. Pretty dry, all things considered, for a stone foundation of 100 years old. The roof is intact, the floors are intact on the inside. It's been entered and used by local kids, so it's not too pretty on the inside. At this point, a lot of the windows have been boarded up, or broken and or boarded up. There is some power in it. It hasn't been heated in a number of years. So that is the existing house. I did not give you a picture of the carriage house. The carriage house was a daycare facility for the church for a number of years. Next slide. As of right, I should maybe ask you to go. Yeah, there you go. I'm sorry. The zoning for this area is Residence A zoning, 40,000 square foot minimum lot size, 150 feet of frontage, not 151. I don't know where the one came from. Setback requirements along the perimeter of any created lot would be 30, 15, 30 front, side, and rear. And an as-of-right zoning without any variances, we believe we could get 7 subdivision lots along a 500-foot cul-de-sac, which is the next image, Bill. Pretty pedestrian land plan. We've looked at others. There's actually a way that you might be able to get 8 in there. Geometrically, the land area, if you do 40,000 square feet into the square footage of 8.5 acres, it would say that you can get a strong 8, but the geometry starts to factor in. This isn't a very compelling plan. We certainly didn't put any color in it to make it compelling, but it's pretty plain. It's just a cul-de-sac of a little less than 500 feet, and then as of right zoning, frontages, and acreage. The 2 lots at the base of the cul-de-sac obviously directly abut the Boston City property line, and on the other side of the Boston City property line is a City of Boston housing project. It is what it is. So we began exploring alternatives to this. Given that we own the property, I could proceed to do this. My basis is such that it would support it, but we wanted to explore whether or not what Northland does day in and day out, and that is try to create what we call multifamily for sale senior housing communities, townhouse condominium communities that are targeted for empty nester active adults with their land planning and their unit design, whether or not we could see a pathway to that sort of use. So if you go ahead, another slide, please. We do have a development plan in here, but the narrative part of that is or maybe I'll let you go to the plan and, Bill, and have the plan, and I can cite this. This is the same parcel that we spoke about before, although it's been rotated, I guess, counterclockwise, so that Cushing is more or less at the bottom of the image as opposed to Dana. But we're proposing to enter the property at the same break in the existing stone wall, historic stone wall, I might add, along Brush Hill Road, and developing a circular loop road around and within which we are proposing to cluster, are there 14 new buildings? I forgot the number, but a number of new buildings along with the retention of the rectory building. These new buildings, I'll work my way from the entrance around counterclockwise. Those are 2, 3, 2, and 3 unit structures on the Dana Ave side. These are 2 to 3 bedroom, 2,000 to 2,400 square foot townhouse units, each of which would have a first floor master bedroom, each of which would have an attached embedded 2-car garage. The second floor would be a 1 or 2 bedroom of space, and generally some sort of loft / home office space incorporated up there. They would be built on a full foundation. Given that the site is flat, the lower levels can't, I suppose they could be finished if they met certain code requirements, but they wouldn't be finished in the sense of I'll use the term ski lodge, if you will, where you have a walkout potential in the lower level to add additional square living area. So again, working around counterclockwise, 2, 3, 2, 3, and then along the rear property you see again several smaller 2 buildings with several smaller structures in the center of the rear property line. Those are an attempt to build and provide some affordable housing product, which I'll get to. And then back around the Cushing side and the middle, again, a clustering of 2 and 3 unit townhouse structures. We worked hard with the neighborhood group and specifically with the abutters on sideline, front yard, and rear line setbacks, all with an attempt to address visibility, massing encroachment on the existing neighborhoods. Like I said a moment ago, existing sideline setbacks on the conventional zoning are 30 feet along the front, 15 along the side lines, that would be Cushing and Dana, and 30 along the rear. We have increased those through a series of conversations and are proposing, and the zoning bylaw speaks to this, a front yard setback along Brush Hill Road of not less than 60 feet, and some of these lines are on the plan but hard to see here. The purpose of that would be so that the visibility of what took place on the property was muted or largely diminished. The neighborhood came up with this notion of a development plan that followed a theme, an evolved estate theme, given that the entire area was originally estates and it has evolved over time into a series of single-family lots and subdivisions, and this being the largest out parcel, one of the larger out parcels remaining, to approach it through some form of evolved estate approach. And that notion was a really interesting one because it spoke a lot to how we use the land. These setbacks and buffers and, if you will, invisibility from Brush Hill Road, maintenance of the stone wall along Brush Hill Road, increased setbacks along the Cushing and Dana Ave sidelines to have thick existing vegetative buffers between new homes and the property line and existing homes beyond were embedded into this plan. So front yard is 60 feet, side are 35, and rear is 30. But as you'll see, we have tried to undulate along the sides and particularly along the front, the massing of the buildings so that there isn't a wall of massing. The buildings are twisted and turned, and the 35-foot setback and/or 60-foot setback along the front or side are really point setbacks. In reality, in many cases, it's a good deal greater than that. The blue line, vaguely visible on the Cushing and Dana side, try to provide a dimension to the closest actual house from the property line. And I can't read my own plan here, but it is fairly substantial what the actual structure of Cushing to the property line and then into the property is, and likewise along Dana Ave. This plan calls for a total of 36 units. We are proposing that 10% of the 36 units, rounded up to 4 units, be provided as affordable or inclusionary housing units on site. We are proposing to retain, rehabilitate, and reuse the existing William Dupree House, which is located kind of dead center, maybe a little offset center, and a circular road accessing this. We are proposing not to do anything with what I'll call the property tail, which is located on the left-hand corner of the property and goes out to Cushing. That would be retained as part of the acreage, and I guess if you wanted to go to church, you could walk to church. We are also proposing to maintain the wall. The notion is to clean out the existing woodland perimeters of dead, diseased, invasive materials, augment it, thank you, that's perfect, augment that with additional plant materials, and try to maintain, if you will, a managed buffer around the perimeter. Not a manicured buffer, woodland buffer around the edge, but a managed one, so that it isn't just I guess crazy wild. That it provides a bit of an amenity for the abutters, and it provides an amenity, a backyard wooded environment for the residents of the community. Again, the target audience here is, what we're really trying to do is develop a housing choice for existing Milton residents that are looking to downsize from a house that they raised their family in over the last 25 to 30 years, and that quite possibly have a second home or third home elsewhere in the state or country, on the Cape or New Hampshire, Maine, or maybe they travel to Florida, the Berkshires. We've probably done 1,000 units of this type of product type in my career. The best example of this at present is a project in Belmont, Massachusetts, sort of a similar, fairly urban, dense town on the side of McLean Hospital. We bought 38.6 acres and developed 121 units of this product, 111 of which is new ground up, 10 of which is 10 of which is in 3 buildings that we rehabilitated and reused. We have extensive buffers around the perimeter for all of the reasons that we have. We agree that they are necessary here. Different constituency. We have a mental institute on one side. We have an arboretum on another side. We have a very busy road called Mill Street along one side, and all of which we wanted to sort of maintain a fairly dense clustering. That density, there's actually 3 parcels of land, but it's on average around 4.5 units to the acre. We're slightly less than that here. And working with the selectmen, the planning board, the direct abutters, and the neighborhood group over a series of meetings, have crafted a zoning proposal that speaks to this plan in part, and speaks to an opportunity to possibly use this type of zoning in a very limited fashion on other sites throughout town for the provision of a different type of housing, for a different housing choice for hopefully existing Milton residents seeking to stay in the town and downsize their housing. So that's a lot of words. There's more slides if you want to sort of scooch through them, Bill, but that is the presentation.
So if you just jump back one, we have met, we met the other night with the Historical Commission. We've met a couple of times with the Historical Commission. I know that Steve O'Donnell, who's the chair, has been at a number of the neighbor meetings. The idea would be to truncate, on the topic, you see the existing frontage of the DePee house, and then below, showing that a wing, which is really sort of an old servants' quarters, kitchen area, being removed. It would be replaced with garage on that side, but we restore the real bones and the guts of the building and provide probably 2 affordable units in there. So I would just make one other comment and then turn it over to the board. Jack mentioned, the bylaw says 10%. When you really look at the number of units proposed and the number of affordables proposed, it's really 11, a little bit north of 11% is the actual percentage, although the bylaw calls for a minimum of 10% of affordable. It's really 11 is the actual.
It could be 12%. But, I mean, let's address that, because at the last town meeting, someone said, well, this only says 10%, let's move it up to 12%, and it was a really close vote. And it does seem to me that there either is some thought that 10% is the right amount, which I think it is, given the fact that it's the percentage the state uses. But people say, well, why not 15%? Why not more affordable housing? And what is the response?
I think the starting point is that providing a level of affordability on a for-profit reuse of property like this is a very different animal than providing affordability on a subsidized basis. The subsidized programs allow significantly greater density to take advantage of subsidies that allow you to be able to provide up to 25% affordable. It's a very different scenario when you're trying to provide affordables in a scenario like this, where each affordable unit is developed at a significant loss to the developer. I think the net loss for each affordable unit is about $400,000. So that's a significant amount of money to make up with density on the affordable side of the aisle. And it is appropriate to think about 10% as a number. In this case, it's really 11. I mean, you look at the reality of it. If it's 11%, it is not 10 and change. It's 11.11%. That helps move the needle a little bit. I know that the town is really concerned about the issue of 40B and the lack of affordability in town, and how can we get to affordability. The fact of the matter is that, we are, as a town, and this is my thinking somewhat on my own, but we are in that bullseye of potential 40B process, and I don't think we'll ever get out of it. because we probably won't ever make up the number. And adding 1% here or 1% there and rendering a development that much more economically difficult to achieve because we want to just get to a number is not the right approach to addressing the issue of affordability. We really have to take it on as a town. The Affordable Housing Production Plan is a great start, and it's the right way to go. But, you know, arriving at a number that is fairly substantive and is a substantial number, 10%, that's a significant component of a development. To arrive at a higher percentage, you now have to turn around and arrive at a higher density count because you've got to figure out how the developer makes up for the net loss of each unit that is there. It's easy to pull the numbers out of the air. The difficulty is pulling the numbers out of the ground and making the numbers work and making the development work for the town. When you push those numbers too far, the developments don't work, and you push them to either a 40B alternative or some other alternative that just doesn't do anything. It results in a poor development without any real benefit to the town. I think this has significant overall benefit to the town. There's significant cost to the redevelopment of that historic structure. There's some cost there to facilitate that, and that was a real strong desire of the Historical Commission. I think town meeting would agree that the restoration of that building was an important overall component to the redevelopment of this site. So, having said all that, I think that the real achievable number of 11.11% of affordable in this case is appropriate, it's doable, it's reasonable, and it will arrive at a well-considered, well-developed project, and it will benefit the town.
That's all. I appreciate all those comments. I guess my response to that is that's fine for this project, perhaps. This guideline is supposed to be being structured for a limited amount of other opportunities here. And I share very much Mr. Whiteside's concern that we face a tough vote because of that 10% number. We've already heard about it at the warrant committee. We certainly heard about it at the last town meeting. It was a very close vote, and I think it was decided by four people, I think, or
About
4 to
that.
6, one or the other. I wonder if there's an opportunity here to, without risking any ability to move forward with this project, which I think is a great project, look at something that allows for a bonus with density to provide for another 2.5%, or even a more harsh standard, which is if you are between 10 and 12.5% or 15%, whatever this board decided the number would be, if there's some sort of monetary contribution to the housing fund. Something to make this more appealing for the town meeting vote, because I do think that this will be one of two fairly significant hurdles that we'll have to get over in getting this zoning through. And it played itself out at the last meeting pretty clearly.
There's something else we ought to consider, though, and that is there's a difference between housing that's on the subsidized housing inventory that counts to that, and housing that is affordable but not affordable with a capital A. And one of the things that this development does is it creates or adds to a different housing type in this town. At townhouses, as smaller units, it can be a more affordable option than a single-family home, even though it's not on the subsidized housing inventory. It's something else that ought to come into play. And it does go into our ability as a town to provide different types of housing for the different needs that we see.
And along those same lines, I made this note and I didn't say it, but appreciating the comment about whether or not we can ever get to 10% and then
Right.
putting it aside. There's also a part of the town that, whether we ever get to 10% or not, would like to see us making a better effort. So
Absolutely.
there's a part of this that has nothing to do with the whether or not it counts towards 40B, whether or not it qualifies, whether it's
Right.
small a or big A affordable. It's we want to do a better job of providing different housing types, and therefore we want our projects to have a higher component of affordable housing, small a, or at least some sort of contribution to creating more affordable housing, small a, somewhere in the town.
But that's to my point
I agree.
here.
I
Yeah,
agree. So
exactly.
that's rolling
you-
into your point. Now,
yeah.
I think this is a great project. I think Northland's a great developer. And because of that, I would question how affordable any of these units will really be. I think it's a level of affordability that,
Well, that does come into play. Are you looking at affordability,
You're looking at
comparing
pretty
it to a
nice units.
5-bedroom house, or,
right.
Last year, how many affordable units did the town produce, Bill? Or 7?
The last 2.5 years.
7. It does seem to me that when we go out and create zoning for different housing types, we're trying to say to developers, here, look at this interesting zoning that we've produced, and it's actually to your advantage to use it rather than traditional zoning or 40B. And the more, and I don't know, 10% is a lot of, is in my view, a good percentage. It seems just right to me. I mean, it is a significant contribution by the developer without saying to the developer, basically get lost because we want to do something unreasonable. So it just seems to me that, and I asked the question because it is a financial, the town meeting can't just pull a number out of the air and have it work financially. You're the developer, and you know what works.
Yeah, I do. I think, I mean, I guess we can think out loud a little bit here. I think we are struggling with, frankly, town meeting really doesn't want to hear about developers' economics.
That's correct.
I don't know, I don't know how many people are going to ride my coattails on that one. That's your problem, Jack. I think we, 10% works, and a lot of, and we can craft a rational and reasoned argument around it. I guess what I hear Member Furr saying is we have a bit of an optic problem, perception problem, and maybe we should think about brainstorming on how we solve some of that. The pure economics, an affordable unit's going to sell for about $170,000, and it's going to cost $210 to build. And that's going to be no contribution of Ned's time, my time, land, infrastructure, and that. So, I start at a minimum, order of magnitude, probably $50,000 in the hole, and I can fabricate and articulate numbers beyond that. But again, I've never found sympathetic audiences when I plead poverty. I guess if we go to 15%, 15% of 36 is 5.4. Are we rounding up or are we rounding down? We round up, that's a big jump from 5.4 to 6. We're at 4. One notion that we've been scribbling here is, the rectory building is big. It's a lot of structure. With 2 units in it, they're nice units, and they have been earmarked as a place to put an affordable unit or 2. It's conceivable I could very easily put 3 in there, and you wouldn't know that there were 3 units in there versus 2 units in there. I'm not adding another structure to the site. My impervious calculation's not getting any greater. My coverage ratio is not getting any greater. Sure, I guess maybe my traffic count is a little higher. My bedroom count is a little higher. And I might be able to move the needle from 5 to 4 relatively cost effectively and favorably from my perspective. And then how do you get from, if the calculus is you round up no matter what the decimal point is,
I think we round down.
because I'm on.
It's the nearest number.
Okay. Well,
So you round up or down depending on where it is, or?
Yeah,
you-
.4 you'd round down, .6 you'd round up.
Point
0.5
5, you build half a.
Yeah,
half a-
well,
.5 you actually go to the even number.
So that is, so,
doesn't
you know, so that is an approach,
I don't know.
one approach
Six.
to,
You
to
get
it
a
would be to
6
do
or
it that way.
0.5.
Another approach would be to make to have a bylaw, and I've seen this before, that provides you with the opportunity to provide affordable, let's use inclusionary. In fact, I hate the word affordable because we're really trying to sell moderate priced housing. And this notion of affordable conjures up all the worst. But a bylaw, any bylaw, could be written in such a way where it provides an opportunity for a developer and a planning board to seek a contribution toward inclusionary housing, both in kind, physical product on site, and through monetary compensation elsewhere. Whether in the town of Hanover presently, making a $130,000 contribution to the Hanover Affordable Housing Trust Fund. And, because that's what they want. So, you know, I think we all have a lot invested in this, not the least of which is me, so not, you know, so immodest not to recognize that, but I would say the town, this board, and the residents behind me that have invested lots of time with me are interested in seeing something get done, and something get done that it doesn't, they can live with, and that we can live with. So I provide an option of either adding a unit in this building as opposed to another one on the site, which I think, I won't want to speak for the residents, but would be maybe the blindest approach to on-site housing, or some form of in-kind contribution, if there is such a thing, to the town. And that moves the needle up. And maybe the optic of 15%